Democrat would get the endorsement within a week. Every single environmental group out there, the AFL-CIO, the women's groups. I mean, here's the deal. When I sat with the AFL-CIO, when I sat with the IBW, starting when I ran last time, I said, here's the deal, though. I'm going to be the most pro-American, most pro-union president in history, but you've got to employ more women, you've got to attract more African Americans, and you've got to attract more minorities. They have. They're going around. It's beginning to change. In every industry. Anyway, I go to these sites where they're trained. And by the way, the other thing I've told labor guys, you got to brag a little bit more about what you do. You realize to get a license to be an electrician in this town or any other, you got to essentially go to 4 years of college. You have to go through an apprenticeship that takes you 4 years to 5, depending, or you can't get a job. You get paid a little bit, but you can't get your license to be an electrician, a labor electrician, until that happens. Look, pay for low-wage workers has grown at the fastest pace in over 2 decades. Full employment means workers, especially low-wage workers, having more bargaining power to demand good pay, to secure good jobs. And this is a thing that isn't consistent with whether people think that we're moving in the right direction. Job satisfaction, based on every poll, is at a 36-year high. More people are satisfied with their jobs than any time in 36 years. And the shame of working-age Americans in the workforce, the share of them, is the highest it's been in 20 years. Remember what they were saying? Biden policy isn't working. He's just paying people not to work, people on the sidelines. Well, guess what? Every single day in 4 years before I took office, you may remember, I took a lot of criticism in my presidency. Republicans charged me we're encouraging people to stay home, not work. Well, they were wrong. The evidence is clear. Americans are back to work who've been on the sidelines, and they want to come back. And we're going to continue this progress and make sure every American has the training and education to participate in this new economy. We've increased Pell Grants, made landmark investments in historic black universities. We've invested more in registered apprenticeships and center and career technology education programs than any previous administration in American history. Because of this new economy, we don't need everyone to have a 4-year degree. It's great if you can get one. We're trying to make it easier for you to get one. But you don't need it to get a good paying job anymore. Think of this. How many of you remember going back to high school and they had shop class? And they had classes where people could learn if they were interested in working with their hands. They don't have them very much anymore, anywhere around the country. Well, my wife teaches at a community college, full-time still. She has an expression. She said, any country that outcompetes us, out-educates us, will outcompete us. We're not going to let that happen. That's why we're investing significantly in education. I'm determined to keep fighting for universal pre-K and free community college. We're also fighting to make child care more affordable, because we know one benefit is that it opens up significant opportunities for parents to be able to go back and join the workforce. We're also making it easier to empower workers by making it easier to join a union. As I said, I promise to be the most pro-union president in history, and I tell business leaders all the time, our union workers are the best in the world. It takes 4 to 5 years in that apprenticeship. It's like going to college. They'll do the right job on time. Long-term cost for business is less. You know, addressing the 40-year decline in unionization by supporting project labor agreements, collective bargaining, prevailing wage laws. That's the reason today America's support unions is higher than it's been in 60 years. 60 years. And by the way, I met with the Business Roundtable and others. They said, why am I so pro-union? I said, because it helps you. It really does. Think about it. The total cost of a major project goes down when you have the best workers in the world doing it. Not a joke. It's true. It lasts longer. You don't have to worry about whether that socket's going to work. Look, young people are organizing new companies and industries. You know, I've indicated to labor leaders they must expand their ranks. As I said, more women, more minorities. That's what they got to do. Third part of Biden economics is promoting competition. Because when companies have to compete on a level playing field, they have to work harder to attract customers and recruit and retrain workers. Some of you business people here know that well. But under the trickle-down economic theory, 3/4 of U.S. industries grew more consecrated. I'm thinking I didn't go to Mass. They were moving to diminish competition. Well, that may have been made things easier for big corporations. But for everybody else, it made it harder, more expensive. It got harder for small businesses to compete. It stifled integration. It reduced wages for workers. And it made our supply chains more vulnerable. So, folks, that's been the Republican plan so far. Good for big business, bad for everybody else. It's not even that good for big business anymore. When I came to office with a very different plan, a limited concentration of power at the expense of consumers. The cops are back in the beat enforcing antitrust laws. My administration is working to crack down on what we used to call non-compete agreements. We still call them that. These prevent 30 million Americans, from security guards to retail workers, from walking across the street to the same kind of business and getting a higher pay, getting $5 more a week or $10 more a week. Non-compete agreements? It's one thing to have non-compete agreements when you're dealing with trade secrets. It's another thing when you're doing the same thing of flipping a hamburger and you're going to get 5 cents more by walking across the street to a different place. We promoted, we're supporting small businesses. You know, Vice President Harris has prioritized providing support and capital for small business owners, including for rural minorities and women entrepreneurs, including through a brand new program that's already helping deliver billions of dollars in growth capital to small businesses in every state. We've seen a record 10.5 million applications, 10.5 million applications for folks looking to start a small business just in the last 2 years, 10.5. Every one of those applications is an application of hope. Hope. Competition also means lowering costs for consumers. Bringing down inflation remains one of my top priorities. Today, inflation is less than half of what it was a year ago. And that inflation caused by Russia and by the war in Ukraine and by what was going on. But we knew we had to do more. There's more than one way to bring down costs. Another expression my dad used to use, for real. He'd say, Joey, he said, at the end of the month, the question is, after you pay all your bills, do you have just a little left for breathing room? Just a little less for breathing room. All your bills paid. Do you have anything left? Well, inflation eats into that, obviously. But guess what? Bringing down the cost of medication goes a long way to giving you a little more. That's why through the Inflation Reduction Act, we finally gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices like the VA does now. We've been trying to get this done, Dick and I, for decades in the Senate. This time, we finally beat Big Pharma for the first time. You know, same drug made by the same American company, sold in Chicago, is more expensive than that same drug sold in Toronto, Great Britain, France, Germany, any city you can name, for real. Now seniors on Medicare are paying as much as $400 who were paying $400 a month for insulin last year are now paying $35 a month. Because guess what? You know how much it costs to make that insulin? 10 TEN dollars. Package it, maybe 12 total. And the guy who invented the insulin didn't even ask for a patent because he wanted everybody to have access to it. We're just finishing the first round of negotiating drug prices. And we'll say to taxpayers this year, $160 billion. That's like a tax cut. Lowers the cost of prescription drugs and it lowers the federal deficit as well. We're expanding health care coverage for more Americans, building on Barack's Affordable Care Act. You know, why we're doing that? I'm proud to strengthen that act. saving average families $800 a year on their health care premiums. We're also fighting to end junk fees. Most people don't think of it that way. Well, here's what a junk fee is. They can add up to hundreds of dollars a month for a family. Like that extra fee when you say, I want my child to sit next to me when I take him to see Grandpa on the West Coast. It's not listed now. They're listing it now. Hotel resort fees. You don't realize, you're not told they're going to be, you know that ad in television? Mine is $200, his is $180. Well, guess what? Or the one that bothers me the most is overdraft fees for banks. The banks made $7.7 billion a year on overdraft fees. You overdraft a check, you get a penalty. It's one of the leading bank presidents, God love him, he's passed away, but he had a yacht. The name of the yacht was Overdraft. Swear to God. Well, guess what? There are going to be no more overdraft fees. Folks, we're doing this, doing all this, reducing the deficit at the same time. Just in my first 2 years in office, my team and I have reduced the deficit by $1.7 trillion, more than any president has. Just in 2 years. And the budget agreement I negotiated without having to give away anything of consequence reduced the deficit by another $1 trillion. You know, reversing 40 years of Republican trickle-down economics that helped few but hurt the middle class, it's going to take some time. But we're in a place where some big pieces, and we're moving in a direction where we can get some more done and people will see it. What I'm doing, and I knew I'd have to do this, all those major legislations we pass, people go, that's great, but it takes time to get it out in the field. It takes time for them to see it. And I'm not here to declare victory on the economy. I'm here to say we have a plan that's turning things around incredibly quickly. But we have more work to do. For example, does anyone here think the federal tax system is fair? Raise your hand. No matter how much money you make. We're going to make it fair by eliminating loopholes for crypto traders, hedge fund managers. Big oil made $200 billion last year and got a $30,000 tax break, $30 billion tax break. We're going to get billionaires to pay up a little bit, at least the minimum tax. You know,